Hello world! Today I'm going to show you part of my culture. This day in particular is called Koningsdag. It is one of the biggest celebrations in the Netherlands to celebrate our king, Willem Alexander. People from all over the country take part in this special occasion and they come by the boats, literally, in the canal, on the bridge, and all over the city. Oh, and if you see a lot of orange, it's because it's our national color. And anyone who's anyone is celebrating, and we do mean everyone. But let me take you all the way from the Netherlands across the water to California in the city of Long Beach, where all the Dutch Indonesians and Indos like me celebrate our version. It's a mixture of Kingsday and Indo culture. For us, Indo doesn't just mean Indonesian, it's a culture that was lost in the Indo people, and Indo is anyone that was part of the Dutch East Indies Trading Company routes and shared Dutch descent. People all over California come to Gimrick Park in Long Beach on this day to celebrate music, dancing, and of course, food. Like our most famous satay, a chicken and beef skewer with our famous peanut butter sauce and some rice. I got a chance to interview some of the people that help keep my culture alive. One person I want to acknowledge is Maria. I'm really sorry that the audio was corrupted in our interview. However, I still want to tell you a little bit about her and her family. She's not even Indo, she's Latin American descent. And she's actually worked for one of the longest running families that owned the Dutch Indonesian shop that supplied all of our cultural food, snacks, ingredients, and more. She loved our culture so much that when the original family left, she stayed with the connections and opened her own store called the Holland International Market. Speaking of our food, you know the cheese that everyone in the store gets and pronounces Gouda? It's actually pronounced Gouda. It's Dutch, and it's in the Netherlands where it originates from. The Dutch grocery store ran for 71 years before Maria Cervantes and her family took over and rebranded in Bellflower, California, as the Holland International Market since 2014. She loved our culture so much that she even learned how to speak our language. She also delivers all over the US, and you can order some of our culture by visiting www.hollandinternationalmarket.com. I'll go ahead and post them in the video as well. For now, let's get into some interviews so I can let others tell our story and our mission as Indos.
All right, greetings everybody. We're here with Musan Magazine International, the U.S. division, I believe, because Vivian also runs, she's in the San Diego location right now visiting, correct?
Yes, I'm visiting from the Netherlands because we're based in Holland, in
There
The
you go.
Hague, Indo capital of the world, and now we're visiting here to meet everyone.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit more about your magazine. What have you been doing as far as getting the Indo community together? I know you guys are trying to kind of have an outlet for the newer generation to learn more about the cultural histories.
Yes. Musan is a magazine that has been around since 1956 in the Netherlands, but it's a Dutch publication. And what we've noticed is as the older generations depart, the younger generations don't master the Dutch language. So we decided to publish the magazine in English so that the younger generations can also learn about their heritage, their history, and we can connect them through this magazine. So what people do, we ask people to share their story, their family story, but also their story about what they're doing now, what they're doing in terms of safeguarding their culture, passing on Indo culture, and they share their stories with the magazine, and we also write the stories ourselves. And it's an international magazine, so it's also about the Indo community in Australia, in Canada, in Europe, and in the Netherlands, and we put them all together in that magazine.
Awesome. And is it both in English and Dutch?
The Indo International is our English language publication, which comes out every quarter, and then the Dutch magazine, Musan, is in Dutch, and it comes out every month. So if you know
Awesome.
Dutch, you can read the Musan, and if you know English, you can read the Indo International.
Awesome. I appreciate you helping out the community and connecting, especially the younger generations. My family is probably one of the, well, I'm personally the second generation of Indo-Americans, and my father and my mother were the first. They were actually presidents of the SOS Club
Right.
that were part of the big Indo community in Glendale, I believe is where it was, and then it expanded to San Pedro and then Burbank area as well.
So my grandfather, Charlie Robinson, who was actually the founder of the magazine, was also one of the founders of the SOS.
Awesome.
And when he was here in the 60s, he put together the SOS with all these other people, and he started the American Tong Tong with American magazine also for the Indo community. But when they moved back to the Netherlands, my family did, that magazine, the American Tong Tong, went over into the Indo, that small yellow leaflet
Yep.
put on by Rene Kreutzberg.
Yep.
And so that has been around for the past years until, unfortunately, Rene Kreutzberg passed on.
So what interesting stories do you have coming out in the next edition?
Oh, our newest edition is out right now. We have a really interesting story about a historical article about how a lot of the immigrants that came from the Dutch East Indies to the Netherlands were put up in sanatoria because they suffered from tuberculosis and how they were separated from their families. We have a beautiful story about Mr. Mr. Daniel Unger, written by Andrea Matisse, who is from San Diego area.
Awesome.
And we also have in there a beautiful story about how there's going to be a monument, especially for those women in the Dutch East Indies who became victims of the Japanese system of forced prostitution. And there's a woman in Holland, Griselda Molemans, and she wants to honor these women and erect a monument especially for them.
That's very close to me because I've heard stories through my grandmother that grew up during the wartime, and they were actually taken into the camps, and she was part of that situation. My family is actually from my mother's side. I'm actually part Japanese, but we never knew that portion because my grandfather I up knowing, he was a Kunil officer. He was a first lieutenant in the Royal Dutch Marines, and the only reason why he met my grandmother was because his translator was Dutch and Indonesian and spoke both languages. They assumed because he was from Holland and Indonesian descent that he spoke Bahasa. And so when he would drop off my uncle, he saw my grandmother there holding my mother, and he asked him, hey, can I ask that woman out on a date? And that's how I grew up knowing my grandfather from the Monod de Forteville side. So that actually is a great and interesting thing to see a monument be resurrected for victims that have dealt with that, because that hits close to my family's house.
Yeah, well, you can read all about it in the latest magazine.
I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for everything you guys do for the community.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
So we are here with the founder of the Indo Project. Her name is Priscilla. Priscilla, tell us a little bit about what inspired you to start the Indo Project, and what is it about?
The Indo Project, let me start with the Indo Project. What it's about, it is to preserve, to celebrate, and to educate other people about our Indo history and culture. We've been fortunate to be part Dutch and Indonesian, but we don't want to be a footnote in Indonesian or Dutch history. So we want our own page. And that's started the Indo Project, to educate others that they don't think that we are some other subculture or some ethnic group that belong to the Indonesians or to the Dutch. Although we're proud to be Dutch and Indonesian, but we want our own Asian history.
Definitely. And I've heard some talk that Indo isn't actually just the Indonesian culture. It's Dutch mixed with other ethnicities as well that were part of the Dutch East Indies. So a little bit about the Dutch Indo Project. What is it exactly as far as the expanding of knowledge? Do you go into other countries as well, Indos that aren't necessarily Dutch or Indonesian or the United States? Are there other areas that you guys also go into to bring awareness?
Our Indo history is mostly in Dutch or Indonesian books, going back again, that we're this footnote. What we want our own page, and what we do is we do it in English, because everything is in Dutch or Indonesian.
Yeah.
You go to the movies, you go to the old films, the old film reels, history books, all the important statistics are all in Dutch or Indonesian history books. So when we started the Indo Project, it was in English alone, because we wanted to just think, when you do it in the Dutch language, you impact 23 million people. When you do it in the English language, you educate 1 billion.
Wow, that is amazing.
And so when you ask about who are we trying to educate, we're trying to educate the world about who we are. We've been suppressed for a long time.
And what about the Indonesians? Because I noticed that when you go to Indonesia now, a lot of the Indonesians call themselves Indos. even though they're not of Indo descent.
Yes.
As far as being able to corner the market to really coin what an Indo is, do you find yourself having setbacks with the Indonesian community trying to use the term Indo?
Oh no.
No?
No, we try to be inclusive.
Okay.
Inclusive because Indo to us, it's Indo-European. So that means that whoever from European descent married an Indonesian person is Indo, and all their descendants. So we're inclusive rather than exclusive. And we even take in the Perikanan, which is the Chinese Indos, you know. So,
Awesome.
like I said, we try to educate the entire world and tell them about who we are as a culture, as a people.
And as far as expanding out, where are some areas that people can go to get this information from the Indo Project?
The internet,
The internet?
the website,
All right, what is the website?
www.theindoproject.com.
All right.
I have to correct that. It's .org because we are a non-profit. We're
Okay.
not here to make money. Non-profit, international non-profit, non-governmental organization. So
And how long have you been doing the Indo Project for?
its incubation period was about 5 years in 2011, 12. It took me 5 years to get it as an international nonprofit. You know, all the rigmarole about bylaws,
Red tape.
yeah,
Yeah.
and getting registered articles of incorporation. And it took us 5 years. So we've been in existence I think in 2008 that we got our nonprofit status. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you guys are actually also part of the inspiration to throw on these events like the Possum Malams and the Dutch, Kingsday festivals. You are actually working with others in the different entities to throw this together.
That's part of our mission, is unification, because we as Indos are fractured people. We've been thrown out of the Dutch East India, and we're all over. We're fractured. So one of our missions is getting these events and supporting them. We cannot afford to do these events without other groups, like the UNO, like we go to these kumpulans that people put on, and we support them. What we do is we try to elevate others that do the Indo pride.
I love that. And I love that it's bringing the newer generations now.
Oh.
Seeing my nieces and my nephews growing up to becoming the third and fourth generation of Indas. It's amazing to see more and more of the younger generation here getting involved.
Oh no, I'm glad. I'm glad we're able to do that.
I'm happy, and thank you so much for your time. And thank you for coming to my family's parties and always being there.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
That your brother Paul, I met him, and with his 3 children, is exactly what you're talking about, handing our history down to the younger generation. You know, and what you're doing right now, and that's what I hope. I'm getting older, and I hope that you and others like you will carry on.
And I understand you have a daughter as well, so hopefully she carries on the torch.
Oh yes,
And-
yes.
and
it
keeps it
took her a
going.
while. It's hard for us parents to initiate that interest in Indo because they're in America. But we try to do it, and I hope all the people that watch this will do that. And
I
thank
hope so
you.
too.
Thank you for doing this. I
I
appreciate it.
appreciate it as well. Thank you so much for your time.